Okay, YouTube, welcome back. I would like to very quickly show you the most discernible difference between Boxer Prime Brass and Berdan Prime Brass. This is a cross section of a 7.5 Swiss casing. As you can see, it has a single hole and a standardized size primer for this rifle, type, or for this size of cartridge. Okay. A Berdan or Berdan primed casing has two flash holes. Hopefully you can see right there. Now, of course, if you ran this up in your resizing die and you didn't know it was Berdan primed, it'd probably break your decapping pin unless you're working with Lee sets, in which case the Lee set would just slip up past the little collar that holds it. Okay? Now, from the back, they both look practically the same. For the most part. The problem with, a lot of people say, well, why can't you load Berdan Prime Brass? Well, you can reload it. It's just a major pain in the butt. With the way that the ammo and primers and powder and all that kind of stuff is going, you end up having a bit of a problem finding primers as it is, much less Berdan primers. And to make the matters a little bit worse, there's really no standard size of Berdan primers. For rifles, you're going to have several different sizes, so you end up having to, track down the proper size. And then, if you can find the right size, then there's a matter of even just finding them available. So, Boxer Prime Brass is just a lot handier, a lot more user-friendly. The Boxer Prime Brass is actually a European invention, while the Berdan Prime Brass is actually an American invention. I just find it funny that European brass uses the American system, and our brass uses the European designed, centralized flash hole system. All in all, in terms of accuracy, there's really not a whole lot of difference between the two. If you don't believe me, just pick up a box of the GP11 Surplus 7.5 Swiss ammo. It's made very well, and it's Berdan Prime, but I tell you what, it shoots really good. So, that's the basic rundown. I just had a question about that, and somebody was wondering the difference, and that's the difference. Most American brass is Boxer primed. You have a lot of the foreign offerings that are coming in the country now that are offering Boxer Prime brass because they know so many people reload them. Probably 99.9% of all your surplus brass, especially from Europe, is going to be Boxer primed. So, I mean, if you got a can of 147 grain Russian light ball for your Mosin, then chances are it's going to be Berdan primed. Or I know it's Berdan primed. And this is actually a good example. This is some of that Yugo Surplus 7.62 by 54 rimmed ammo that was coming in the country. This ammo has a head stamp of 1986, so it's not horribly old. Has a real nice annealed casing, good quality brass, good bullet, it shoots really good, but Berdan primed. Now, I've been holding some of the cases, for a rainy day, but all in all, for probably 90% of hand loaders, purposes, Boxer primed is going to be about the only thing that anybody's interested in terms of reloading. Unless, of course, they got a really good source of Berdan primed brass. Now, with Berdan Prime Brass, there is a way you can remove the primer, but it usually involves either some sort of crazy hydraulic method where you fill the case full of water and you run like a tight-fitting punch through there and it pushes the primer out. Or RCUBS makes a Berdan decapping tool that basically has a little hook that reaches in there and grabs it and it pulls it out. The problem with Berdan Prime Brass, once you get past the finding the components, determining the proper size primer, removing the old primer, then you have basically what is like a little anvil in there. With a Boxer Prime piece of brass, the anvil and the priming mixture and all that stuff is contained within the primer, and you just have basically a hole for it to sit in, like you see there. But with this casing, if the primer is out, you'll be able to see a little anvil in there that's actually integrated into the casing. After repeated firings, that anvil will begin to flatten out more and more, and it'll wear out. and eventually the problem you'll run into is that it just won't work anymore. So, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I really don't think Berdan Prime brass is worth messing with unless it's in a caliber where you just cannot find any ammo for it anywhere. But for most calibers, I would say it's not even worth the hassle. So hopefully this wasn't horribly long, but there you have it. That's Berdan versus Boxer in a nutshell.